We have our top 10 players in Major League Baseball. This is not necessarily random because we've been doing a top 50 list over the last 4 weeks. So if you want to check out where we rank guys, go check those episodes out. Episodes 295 through 298 is where the rest of the top 50 is, in the later half of the episode. And yeah, you can see where we have certain guys ranked because I'm sure there's guys who would be in some listeners' top tens that are not in our top tens. I think most fans would have Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto in the top 10, but I do not. And by the way, disclaimer, this is going to be a separate video, but it, for the top 10 list, I'm putting Shohei Ohtani outside the top 10, and I'm sure you're not putting him one because this is a projection for 2024. If he was pitching, he would be number one, I think, pretty clearly for both of us.
Yeah, no, it's very comfortably.
Yes. But yeah, I think that's all I really have to preface this. Who is your number 10
Yeah.
player in baseball for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I've made it very known that I am in on this guy for 2024. I put him number 2 in my shortstop rankings, and I'm putting him in the top 10 overall. I am talking about Bobby Witt Jr. We've really only seen him play at an elite level for a couple months, but I'm still buying all in. Not only is Bobby Witt Jr. an elite base runner and an elite fielder. I mean, maybe the best base runner. If anyone's beating him, it's probably only Corbin Carroll. But I mean, last year he was, I believe, top 5 in F4 among all position players in the last couple of months of last season. And I believe he can continue doing that going into 2024. He had a high expected batting average because he had a 25.9% line drive rate. He had a high expected slugging. Kaufman obviously doesn't help him, but he's hitting the ball a lot harder. He's barreling up the ball a lot more, and he struck out a lot less than he did last year. More specifically in the span, his strikeout rate was able to go down, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, Bobby Witt Jr., to me, I think that what we saw in August and September last year was pretty close to the real deal. I think he's going to continue to do that, and with good defense, with above average offense, I'm thinking like a 125 to 130 weighted runs created plus, good base running, you're going to see a top 10 F4 among all position players.
Yeah, he's got the whole, or at least has the capability of being the whole package. My number 10 is a guy you just mentioned, Corbin Carroll. He was your number 13, so we're not very far apart on him.
Yeah.
And yeah, just talking about him, like ninth in F4 last year. Didn't play a full season before that, but ninth last year, and he, had the highest BSR in a modern era season. And we do get caught up in the base running and how fast he is and whatnot, but let's also remember, guy had a 134 OPS plus. That's really, really good. The guy outslugged Pete Alonso, Rafael Devers, and Bryce Harper last year while having the highest BSR in a season in the modern era. That's pretty amazing. Also had the first season since 1995 among all players, even non-rookies, with a 130 OPS plus and 12 plus base running runs. So yeah, like his production at the plate paired with his historic base running is something that cannot really be understated. And yeah, he is, based on what he did last year, and like he outperformed his expected metrics, but not by anything more than I would expect him to, considering the fact that he does have that speed where he can, consistently outperform his expected metrics. I expect his numbers to be like fairly similar this year. And he was a top 10 player last year, and I expect him to stay top 10 this year. Do I expect that BSR to be over 15 again? Probably not, but I expect it to be around double digits. And I see that defense I think that defense can improve as well because he had some like negative defensive numbers. So I could see that going up. Maybe the BSR goes down, but I still see him being top 10. Who is your number 9?
Yeah, my number 9, this is where we get the conclusion on one of our biggest discrepancies on this entire list. It's Mike Trout. You had him at number 33. I put him at number 9. The difference being that you considered the potential for injury and I did not. I'm willing to set that aside and look at what he did do when he's on the field And look at what I believe he can do if he stays on the field this year. And is that a thing that I should assume? No, it probably isn't. He hasn't played a full season since 2018. But Mike Trout is still a really, really good hitter. He had his worst offensive season last year with only a 131 OPS plus. But even still, he got a bit unlucky in terms of the expected numbers, and all of the underlying stuff still suggests he can be the elite bat that we've always known him to be. He is still hitting the ball at an average exit velocity around 92 miles an hour. That's he was actually above his own career average last year, very slightly. He's hitting the ball in the air a lot more than he usually is. He hit a 32% fly ball rate last year, a 43.7% pull rate. The strikeouts were bad last year, but they've always kind of been bad. Like Mike Trout has, for a while, been a high strikeout kind of guy. It's been over 28% in every year since 2021. He led the league in strikeouts the year he unanimously won MVP in 2014. And, when you look at the expected numbers, a 523 X slug to a 490 actual slug, a 275 expected batting average to a 263 actual batting average. Very good chase rate, which means he's walking a lot. He's hitting the ball in the sweet spot a lot at a 38% sweet spot rate, which is excellent, a 16% barrel rate. And like I mentioned earlier, that average exit velocity. His defense has actually gotten a lot better throughout, like in recent years. Like he kind of struggled with it for a couple years, but he put up 4 outs above average in center field last year, so he can still play it defensively. He is still sprint speeding a 96 percentile sprint speed at age 32. Like his speed has not diminished over the years. Yeah, obviously you have to consider the fact that he hasn't stayed on the field in a while, but at the same time, when he's on the field, he is still, I would argue, a top 10 player in the league. And I think if you weren't considering injury, you would have put him at least top 20, maybe top 15, top 10. But I think 9 is where I landed on him.
Yeah, if I expected 150 games out of him this year, I think I would put him top 10 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and yeah, it's just a difference in like our line of thinking with these lists. Like I think my line of thinking was, so for example, I put Nimmo 32 and Raleigh 34. So I my line of thinking was I'll take 150 games of Nimmo over 100 games of Trout, which I'm like expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like not every estimation is going to be accurate, but I'm also like I'm taking 100 games of Trout over 135 games of Raleigh. So like that's kind of my line of thinking there. But yeah, I'm as I said in that episode, I'm hoping to be wrong on that one. I hope to see him out there for at least 140 games this year. It would be pretty cool because I'd love to see him stack up some numbers as his career continues to go. My number 9 is a guy who you're not having in this top 10. Um, which it's there's some stiff competition. What I will say also is my 6 through 12 is all very close, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it'll be more understandable when I get to my 6. But my number 9 is Francisco Lindor, who you had as your number 18. I think part of my thinking here is just the general consistency out of him. He's just kind of always been very good, even in 2021. Like he was still able to put it up around like 4 wins above replacement. But regarding the last 2 years, only Lindor, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman have had 6-win seasons each of the last 2 years. And then combined, Lindor is fourth in F4 since the start of 2022. And last year, he had the first season since Mookie Betts's 2018 with 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases, and 1.5 D-WAR. He had a very sneaky 30-30 season. I get that, stolen bases were a bit easier last year and will be easier going forward considering the rule changes, but a sneaky 30-30 season, got caught only 4 times. That was really impressive. And also, yeah, put up 6 wins above replacement, was well above average defensively, according to both defensive runs saved and outs above average. So, like, that is a Gold Glove capability shortstop who's regularly at least 20% above average at the plate, and also an excellent base runner. Not only steals bases, but doesn't really get caught on the bases either. And with with Lindor, he's one of those guys where you kind of have to use wins above replacement to fully evaluate him because he is so collective in his skills. And I do get maybe not putting him higher because like part of that wins above replacement is just he's been on the field a lot as opposed to some of these other guys. But but yeah, like with Lindor, I have to respect what he's been doing over the last 2 years, and based on the underlying stuff, I don't really see it slowing down this year. On to your number eight.
Yeah, my number eight, making his first appearance on either list, in fact, on any list that we have done this offseason, it is Jordan Alvarez. Neither of us have talked about him in any capacity throughout this process because we didn't do DHs. We counted him as a DH, although maybe we could have put him on a left field list somewhere. But regardless, we both decided to count him as DHs for this, but I am counting him as the number eight player in the league. There is a very easy case to make that Jordan is just the best hitter in baseball. I mean, I think it's between him and maybe one or two others. But when you look at what he's done throughout his career, a 978 career OPS in over 2,000 plate appearances, 390 OBP, a 588 slugging, already 129 home runs. And another guy that has had some slight trouble staying on the field, not to a crazy degree, but he did just miss the qualifier last year at 496 plate appearances, but regardless, he still put up a 990 OPS, and even that felt quite unlucky. He had a 300 expected batting average with a 293 batting average, a 626 expected slugging with a 583 actual slugging. He had a 93.3 mile per hour average exit velocity, continuing to hit the ball incredibly hard. He's not striking out at any high rate. He's not chasing. He's not whiffing at a high rate, particularly at all. He like I don't know. I mean, it's hard to put it into words really because we've never. It's hard to imagine the fact that he's actually kept up his 2019 rookie year over a 5-year, 6-year span. But that's what he's done. Last year, he almost hit more fly balls than he did ground balls, which is always an excellent thing. He's also hitting a lot of fly balls, but not popping up. He has a 31.7% fly ball rate and a 4.1% pop up rate, which is very impressive. Like it's very easy to mix those up or to have them correlate a lot more, but he doesn't really have that. So Jordan Alvarez is in my number 8 spot.
Yeah, typically hitters with like, higher ground ball rates have lower pop-up rates and higher fly ball rates have higher pop-up rates. But so there's usually like some sacrifice involved with that. But if you're able to get a 30+% fly ball rate and a sub 5% pop-up rate, that is a sign of a guy who knows what he's doing. And Jordan Alvarez seems to be that. My number 8, I maybe I made a mistake here in giving myself more time to get more hype about him, but doing more research, I'm still in that Jose Ramirez hype train. I'm telling you. I have him at number 8 here. Probably higher than most people, obviously, as I've been tooting the Ramirez horn for a few years. But overall, just looking at him on the surface, top 5 in F4 over the last 2 years, and he is the only player in baseball to be top 15 in F4 each of the last 3 years. It's interesting. That's the consistency aspect. Like obviously he hasn't won an MVP in this span. He hasn't been the best
We know
player
he
in
should have in 2020.
in 2020, but that doesn't even include that.
Doesn't even include the span, but we know he should have won one.
He should have won one, but he's never been like in these 3 years, never been the best player in baseball, but he's been consistently top 15, and no one else has been able to do that due to either underperformance or injury. For the most elite players, it's been injury, but nonetheless, and then under the surface, there are various reasons to expect some offensive improvement from Jose Ramirez. He had tied for the highest average exit velocity of his career last year and the highest sweet spot rate of his career, while keeping his strikeout rate in the 98th percentile in all of baseball. And that's despite like his actual results went down, but based on that, I expect those numbers to go back up to what they normally were. He also pulled 37% of his fly balls last year, which was 10 percentage points above league average. And he had 5.2 more expected home runs than actual home runs, which was the second unluckiest difference in baseball. So in saying that, I expect that OPS plus to be back over 140, along with good defense and good base running. He's a good third base defender. He's a very good base runner, steals a lot of bases and gets a lot of extra bases on other guys' hits. And along with that, he's consistently over 130 OPS plus, and I expect that to be over 140 with some of that underlying stuff that I was just talking about, like having 5.2 less expected homers than actual homers, or 5.2 more expected home runs than actual homers is that's pretty astronomical. Some of that was just he hit the top of the wall like 3 times last year.
He
I
did.
expect that to I expect some of those to, hover over this time. So I expect his offensive numbers to go up. So yeah, I'm excited once again for the millionth year in a row for Jose Ramirez. But yeah, I have him number 8. I'm at the front
No,
of the train once again.
if I put him above you, I would have just canceled the whole segment.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe it would have shown some growth on my side, just like
Yeah.
some less bias. But
Some character development.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
So in my number 7, I probably would have had this guy number 1 in previous years. But I am going with Juan Soto. I've picked him to win MVP every year, I think, since 2020. Uh,
yeah,
hasn't happened yet. Hasn't
yeah,
happened yet. But uh, I think, like the change of scenery is going to mean something for him, and I also think the contract here is going to mean something for him. There are obviously things that he has struggled with in the past. He's a man of extremes, if you will, with defense, with sweet spot percentage, stuff like that. Obviously there are things he needs to improve on with the ground ball rate, the defense, maybe the base running. But let's talk about what he does extremely well. Juan Soto, for his entire major league career, including last season, has walked more than he has struck out. And in turn for that, he has also hit the ball incredibly hard. He has been a power hitter. He had a 538 expected slugging last year, which was 95th percentile. He had 99th percentile hard hit rate, 99th percentile chase rate, in a 100th percentile walk rate. And he had a bit of an uptick in strikeouts where it went up to 18.2%, which is still 75th, 74th percentile. We always talk about how, more contact means, or more power means you're sacrificing some contact. And if you are hitting the ball in play a lot, you're sacrificing power. Well, Juan Soto's not really doing that. I mean, he is, at least not from a count perspective. He still hit 35 home runs last year in San Diego, a difficult park to hit in as a hitter, as a power hitter, especially. He stole 12 bases last year, which is, a high for a few seasons in terms of, his recent years. And I believe that the Yankees will help them improve on the various things. Like the Yankees have been good at keeping their guys from hitting it on the ground. Um, the defense, it's hard to say, but I think there are still some improvements that Juan Soto can make. And I think going into the contract year, um, he's going to make them, right? I mean, he's got this year to justify why he turned down a $425 million contract, and I think he's going to do it. And for that reason, I put him in my number 7 spot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean he has the capability, no doubt. My number 7 is about another young outfielder. Um, it is what did I say about there? My number 7 is another young outfielder, and that is Julio Rodriguez, old J-Rod
Mm-hmm.
out there. He was your number 12.
I would say
Um,
I'm glad that the 4 guys that I didn't put in my top 10 you have in your 10, 9, 8, 7.
Yeah, that does actually, yeah, that provides some agreeableness. So yeah, with Julio Rodriguez, there was some general drop in offense production on the surface, and I think you mentioned a couple underlying things that also went in the wrong direction. However, I was encouraged by some underlying things that did go in the right direction. His expected numbers improved due to some slight drops in strikeout rate and pop-up rate, and a slight increase in average exit velocity. So I know his OPS plus went from like the high 140s to the high 120s, but I'd expect that to rise back up, maybe not necessarily to 2022 level, but in the 130s or maybe even low 140s. And also away from hitting in total, because J Rod is a really good hitter, but also what makes him Julio Rodriguez is the fact that he's really good at everything. He had 12 outs above average last year. He had 37 stolen bases, a 57% extra base taken rate, and 7.0 BSR last year. So like he has the whole package, and if he makes those, and if those underlying numbers, spark that offensive improvement that I expect him to be, a number 7 player in baseball. And since the start of May of 2022, his rookie season, he ranks fifth in F4. So I think he's shown that, and I believe he will continue to show that um, this upcoming year. Only 23. Yeah, crazy. Yeah, he's younger than us. I forgot. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, like he obviously has the ceiling. Um, and we don't even know if we've hit his ceiling yet. But regarding, yeah, who's your number 6?
Yeah, with my number six, by the way, I went back and forth on my five and six for so long, and I changed them like six times each. But I ended up putting Freddie Freeman in the six. Uh, and it was a tough decision, but that's what I ended up going with for my number five mostly. Freddie Freeman has been the model for consistency throughout his entire career. It feels like, I mean, he went to the Dodgers in his 30s and has picked right up where he went left off, and in some ways gotten even better. He had a 46% sweet spot rate last year, a 46.6% sweet spot rate in 521 batted balls. Not only is he still playing every day, 730 plate appearances, but he's doing so at an extremely high level, right? I mean, he's kind of the poster child for 300, 400, 500 in terms of a slash line. He's done it for the last two seasons now. He did it again last year. Obviously, the defense is fine for first base. I mean, outs above average wise, it's good. Defensive runs above average, it's fine, right? But it is still first base, so it's negative generally speaking. I think that was kind of what put me over the edge to put him at six, only for F4 purposes. But yeah, Freddie Freeman is among the best hitters in the game. You could probably again make the case that he is the best if you like his style particularly. You know, he is a he is every brand of a hitter, right? He hits for contact, he hits for power, he doesn't strike out, he walks a lot, he doesn't chase, he hits the ball hard. He had an average exit velocity out of exactly 90 last year. He barrels the ball up well. He's also a very good base runner, despite not having a lot of speed. He had 86 percentile base running run value last year, a strong fielder at a weak defensive position. And yeah, he is my number six player in all of baseball right now.
Yeah, Freddie Freeman. I'll get into him, but I will be talking first about Yordan Alvarez, your number 8. And yeah, I think this pick at Yordan Alvarez at number 6 is sort of unlike me. Usually I like, guys with defensive value,
Mm-hmm.
guys with good health. With Yordan Alvarez's health, like, it is a bit fishy, but the fact that he's played 100 at least 114 games over the last 2 years and produced as much as he has. I'm not really going to hold it against him yet, at least. So I'm begging him on having a full year this year, and even in saying that, like he even when he hasn't had full years, he's been still really productive. I mean, last year he didn't qualify. He doesn't really play defense all that much, and he still managed 4.5 F4. That's how good he is at hitting. That's pretty crazy. And that's not even as good as he was in 2022. But with Jordan Alvarez, yeah, I think him and Aaron Judge are kind of, or at least have been in their own tier of hitting over the last 2 seasons. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there were a couple guys that had really good seasons last year, but as far as, back-to-back seasons, it's been him and Judge. Over the last 2 years, Yordan Alvarez is hitting 300 with a 1,006 OPS. And in the span out of 105 hitters with 1,000 plus plate appearances, he ranks second in slugging and OPS. And out of 237 hitters with 2,500 plus pitches seen in this span, he ranks second in expected WOBA and expected slugging. All that is just behind one man, Aaron Judge. And although Yordan Alvarez is mostly a DH, he has 96 games in left field over the last 2 years and has a +4 defensive runs saved and only -3 fielding run value. So That's according to Statcast. So he he's not really awful when he goes into the field. Part of that has to do with the fact that he has 9 outfield assists in those 96 games, which is a really high rate of outfield assists. Um, and despite him being a DH and missing some games, he ranks eighth in FWAR over the last 2 years, and he has 6.9 FWAR per 650 plate appearances. So that I can't ignore. I mean, I praise defensive value, I praise base running value, but even as a DH, like Jordan doesn't really lack a crazy amount in that. And the fact that he's, a guy who has over a 1,000 OPS over the last 2 years, that is extremely, extremely valuable to me. And there's no signs pointing to him not sustaining that, because like he had his like batting profile is basically like if Juan Soto didn't have a ground ball problem and maybe walked a little bit less. And it's a very good trade-off for Yordan Alvarez. He is him and Judge, in my opinion, are in a tier of their own. But yeah, on to your top five.
My top five. At number five, I put a guy that unfortunately had to miss some time to an injury last year, and man, were we robbed of some potential great games if he played those games. Corey Seager is my number five, finished runner-up in American League MVP voting last year. Despite only playing 119 games, he still put up over 6 F4 last year, 6.1 to be exact, a 169 weighted runs created plus. And just one of the best offensive seasons, definitely the best offensive season we've seen from him in his career, and one of the best that we saw in baseball. He hits the ball very hard. Another guy that hits a lot of line drives. Another guy that hits a lot of fly balls. Another guy that hits a lot of fly balls but doesn't pop it up. He had a run value per 100 above 1 on every pitch that he's had at least 25 plate appearances and on of which there were very many. So there is not a single thing you can throw Corey Seager that doesn't work, that you can get him out on as a pitcher, essentially. He also played a solid defense at shortstop last year, a premium defensive position, barreled the ball at a 15.2% clip, which was the highest in a non-2020 season, I should say. So obviously the highest in a full season that he's had. He had a 16% strikeout rate, which is pretty on par with what he's done throughout his career, and 9.1% walk rate, also pretty on par with what he's done throughout his career. Yeah, I mean, he has just been an excellent offensive. He was the face of the ship is gone. This guy is going to benefit from it, and he didn't even really benefit from it that hard because he just lifted the ball more and hit for more power. Which was pretty dope that he did that. I think it's cool that he did that actually. And he won his second World Series MVP last year. That's the kind of thing that matters to some people. For me, it mattered enough to put him in my top five.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mentioned earlier that I think my 6 through 12 is fairly interchangeable. Like, Jordan was my 6 and Shohei Ohtani was my 12, but I could easily see them, an argument for those two being flipped. Or like, even, J Rod and Otani, or Jordan and Corbin Carroll. Like I could see arguments for one being better than the other. But then I think there's a bit of a gap, and that's where I start with in our second overlap here. Or maybe more, but I think it's just our second overlap here.
Thanks.
Yeah, Corey Seager he's my number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a really, really good, I mean, unbelievable season last year. Managed a 6-win season, according to wins above replacement, and an MVP runner-up campaign in 119 games. That's very, very hard to do, and that's how good Corey Seager was when he played last year. And I'm not necessarily concerned about the injuries because they didn't seem to be real lingering stuff. I think one of them was like on a foul ball. I don't think it was necessarily like muscle damage or muscle trouble that he had to deal with. So I expect him to play as much or more than he did last year. And he earned every bit of his 1013 OPS and 170 OPS plus, as he was 98th percentile or higher in all expected categories, also 96th percentile in average exit velocity, 92nd percentile in barrel rate, 86th percentile in sweet spot rate, and 84th percentile in strikeout rate. There was not really any weak point of his offense last year, and that's what leads to having a 1013 OPS. Like with the with the sweet spot rate being what it was, that means he was putting it at an optimal launch angle. 84th percentile strikeout rate means he was making contact, and 96th percentile average exit velocity means he was hitting the ball hard. Those are kind of the three aspects of offense that you have to include besides, plate discipline, which I think he also had a good amount of last year as well. Maybe not necessarily at a crazy elite level, but it was still pretty good. And so yeah, that's my number five. Also, yeah, the defense is also pretty good at the shortstop position, which says a lot for a guy putting up a 170 OPS plus. Who is your number four?
Yeah, my number four is a guy that has gone through like 17 different positional changes in the last 2 months alone, and it is Mookie Betts. He's playing shortstop now. He was my number one second baseman, but guess what? He's not playing that position because they trust him over Gavin Lux to play short, which is pretty cool. Um, yeah, I mean, look, Mookie is the maybe the best athlete in all of baseball, right? I mean, like we've seen him do everything on the baseball field. We see him bowling, we see him dunking a basketball despite being 5'9". And there's no reason to believe he can't play shortstop as well. That's what we're going to watch him do this year. He was dominant on every aspect of offense last year. His lowest percentile in any offensive metric was 82nd percentile barrel rate, which is hilarious. The defense did take a bit of a step down last year, especially in the outfield. And, we don't know what to expect from him playing a full season at the infield for probably the first time, or likely playing a full season in the infield for probably the first time. But regardless, he's still doing his thing on offense. He had his best offensive season maybe since 2018, late last year. Still a solid base runner as well. And I mean, again, yeah, there's not a single thing he doesn't thrive in. He's pulling the ball a lot more. He had a 27.6% ground ball rate last year, which I love, even for a guy with his speed and athleticism. He has the power to hit it out, so he should just hit it in the air as much as possible. Pulling the ball again at a 45% clip, which I like. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to justify like putting other guys above people at this point because everyone is just so good. But Mookie Betts found his way into my four.
Yeah, 100%. My number four is his teammate, um, Freddie Freeman. Hopefully, I have enough time to talk about him.
Hmm.
Yeah, Freddie Freeman. He might sort of get, I don't know if you'd say lost in the shuffle here, but like he is, I think sometimes people forget about how good and how much how valuable his consistency is on a year-to-year basis. He's the only position player to have a 7-win season in 2022 and 2023. He's the only player to slash 300, 400, 500 each of the last 2 years. And then also in the span, he is second among all players in F4. He's second in batting runs and extra base hits, and he's also first in hits, times on base, doubles, total bases, and also away from offense or away from hitting. Has 4 outs above average and was 23 for 24 on stolen bases last year. So even as a first baseman, he is very valuable on the bases. And with Freddie Freeman, you can really rely on his consistency because his underlying numbers always show that he deserved to be as good as he was. Over the last 2 years, he leads in batted balls in the sweet spot zone as well as hard hit line drives. Like he is the best at consistently getting hard hit line drives, and that's why he has the most hits over the last 2 years as well. And like he's not just an average guy. He's putting out over 20 home runs, at bare minimum 40 doubles a year. Last year he almost got to 60. Like if you look at his baseball savant page, like it is all red in the expected categories because he just consistently does it. I mean, last year he had a 47% sweet spot rate last year. That just does not happen. And that's while keeping his strikeout rate below 17%. That there's a reason why he's the only guy to have a 300, 400, 500 season each of the last 2 seasons, and the only position player to have a 7-win season each of the last 2 years. Because he also, yeah, he does it on the bases as well. So yeah, I'm a Freddie Freeman Stan, just because he always does it, and he's been getting better with the Dodgers for whatever reason. With their player development lab and everything. So yeah, I'm banking him for top five this year. Who is your number three?
Yeah. Were you getting nervous that I was going to put Shohei number one anyway?
No, no.
Okay. Well, I didn't. I put him at number three. I have Shohei Ohtani in my number three. despite not pitching this year. Why? Because I think people underestimate how good he is offensively. Offensively alone, Shohei Ohtani, I think to me is still a top three player in all of baseball. In the integration era, Shohei Ohtani is one of just five hitters to put up a season with 595 plus plate appearances, a 180 OPS plus or higher, and 20 stolen bases. The other four to do so were Joe Morgan in 1976, Barry Bonds in 1992, 1993, and 1996, Mookie Betts and Mike Trout in 2018, and then Shohei Ohtani in 2023. So one of five hitters in the last 80 years almost to do that. And not to mention, he's also a very good base runner. He's quick, and he also has excellent expected numbers. A 427 expected WOBA, which is remarkable. A 19.6% barrel rate. Are you kidding me? A 54.2% hard hit rate. A 15.2% walk rate. Almost averaging a hard hit ball in terms of average exit velocity, 94.4 miles per hour. And the obvious knock against him is, oh, well, he's a DH. And him playing DH allows the Dodgers to re-sign a guy like Jason Hayward that gives them a defensive upgrade. So that to me means a little something. I don't weigh it too heavily, but I feel like it's a slight counter to the he's a DH thing. But I think offensively alone, Shohei Ohtani is still a top three player in all of baseball. And then obviously you put in the pitching, and he's the obvious number one. That's the obvious take, but offensively alone, I would still take him over most players.
Yeah, he was certainly there last year in terms of offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he didn't pitch a single inning last year, I still think he probably should have won AL MVP no matter if he was pitching or not, considering how dominant he was offensively. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see if he can repeat that or get close to it. My number three is also his teammate. It's crazy how crazy how
Yep.
stacked the Dodgers are. But
Say the
this
last four guys we've talked about have all been Dodgers cumulatively.
yes. Yeah, I'm talking about Mookie Betts, who yeah, like made some strong offensive improvements, and based on the fact that there was an actual concrete um thing that made him better, which was having a full off season at Driveline Baseball, which has been known to just improve overall results of high level players. Um, I think that could be sustainable to a degree. Mookie Betts last year had career highs in average exit velocity, sweet spot rate, and walk rate, and that gave him his best average on base percentage and slugging since his historic 2018 season. He was also the only player in 2023 to have a strikeout rate, sweet spot rate, and average exit velocity in the 85th percentile or higher. That is those are three important but mutually exclusive aspects of hitting. That's the ability to make contact, ability to hit a lot of line drives and optimal fly balls, and the ability to hit the ball hard. And he was 85th percentile or higher in all three of those categories. That's really, really good. And I think that's why his offense is fairly sustainable. Along with that, his defensive value in terms of outs above average and defensive runs saved, it's been dwindling a little bit. But although his outs above average was below average last year, I think there's definitely value in the fact that they can really move him around the field wherever. Although that's not going to reflect in the outs above average or the defensive runs saved, there is that value to be like, okay, we can fit another guy in the lineup because Mookie can play short today. Whereas for most players in MLB, understandably so, you can't really do that. So he brings that factor that defensive runs above average or wins above replacement can't really factor in. That should be noted as much as we like to talk about sabermetrics and whatnot. So yeah, I mean Mookie Betts had his best season since 2018 last year, and um I could see him getting close to that again this year. Who is your number two?
Yeah, number two, I have the reigning National League MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr. Um, what an unbelievable season he had. The fact that someone can have a career strikeout rate hovering around like 25% and just decide one year, actually, it's going to go down to 11.4% this year, coming off a year and a half removed from a major injury, is just completely wild. I mean, that is an insane thing that he did last year, while also maintaining a good walk rate and also maybe the best batted ball profile in all of baseball. I mean, 100th percentile in X WOBA, X batting average, X slugging, and average exit velocity, while also not striking out, while walking a lot, while not chasing, while not whiffing. It was just an insane thing. And oh, by the way, he also hit 41 home runs and stole 73 bases. If in case you didn't hear about that, that was a pretty cool thing that he did. Um, yeah, I mean, the fact that he had two run value per 100 against four seamers, sinkers, and sliders, despite facing all of them at least 500 times last year, is absurd. That doesn't happen. People don't do that usually. The fact that he hit straight away 40% of the time is pretty cool. Good for the batting average, and he has the power to for it to not matter because a lot of his home runs went to deep center, which is just remarkable because that's not exactly something you're supposed to be able to do on that consistent of a basis. But he did it last year. He has power to all fields, which is excellent. Obviously, he has speed. There's nothing that he hasn't really excelled in on the baseball field in his career. Obviously, the outs above average took a dip last year, which that's the root efficiency and stuff. He does make up for it with his arm value and his arm strength, which is good. But I put Ronald Acuna Jr. in my two. Last year felt like maybe it's the ceiling, but maybe it's something that he is.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, and I'll be talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. more because he's also my number two.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we talked about this with another guy. Yeah, it was Otani actually, who last year had a career high average exit velocity and a career low strikeout rate. And we talked about how like that's very unusual. Like usually that those two don't happen in the same year. But Acuna did that, but to an extreme degree. Like he cut his strikeout rate by I think more than half, and he had his highest average exit velocity by like more than 2 miles per hour. Like it was absolutely nuts. And like it does seem random, but like the fact that he did it over 100 like 59 games, it's like I can't bank on him, not doing this again. So yeah, I mean, obviously a historic season last year, well earned, as you mentioned, 100th percentile in all expected categories and average exit velocity, along with 73 stolen bases, great extra base taken rate as well. Like yeah, I mean that he won MVP last year, and I expect him to be around this level again this year. It seemed like, 2022 was a bit of a fluke, and all his other seasons have been either really good or elite, around MVP level. So, yeah, I'll put him at two because yeah, normally, yeah, last thing I'll say is like normally I do talk about guys on a 2 year scale, but with like Acuna and Seager specifically, like with the years they had last year, I kind of have to ignore 2022. So, those are some guys I'll make exceptions for. Yeah. Who is, yeah,
Now we get
welcome
to
to
move on to number
the
one.
mysterious number one. Who might it
The
be?
mysterious number one. Yeah. You may remember him from, of course, being number one on his respective positional list. He is the big star of New York, the biggest market in all of sports. He's coming off of an injury-riddled 2023 season. I'm talking about Edwin Diaz, baby. Ring those trumpets, play that song. He is the no. No, obviously my number one is Aaron Judge. Despite the strikeouts, they're still up this year. I don't really care. When you're putting up a 712 expected slugging, that's a joke. That doesn't happen. When you're putting up a 27.5% barrel rate uh, for basically two seasons in a row, because he had a 26.5% barrel rate in 2022. Um, I don't know what else needs to be said about Aaron Judge other than he is just a complete freak of nature. He's a 6'7" outfielder that moves very well and is a pretty good defender. I'd say he's like an average defender based on all the metrics right now. Obviously, the toe was a bit of an issue for him last year. Um, but and he did just undergo an MRI, and who knows what that's gonna be. But what I do know is Aaron Judge just continues to put up fly ball rates north of 38% or 40%, like he did in the last 2 years, respectively. It doesn't matter where he's hitting the ball, whether he's pulling it or hitting it to the opposite field. One, because he plays in Yankee Stadium, but two, because he averaged 97.6 miles per hour on his average exit velocity last year. With that, you're hitting it out at any part of the ballpark. The beautiful thing about Aaron Judge is that obviously he has this kind of freak power because of just his size, but he also distributes it so well. If you look at his three highest fly ball rates in any season, in any full season, it's 2017, 2022, and 2023, which were probably his three best offensive seasons in his career. From 2018 through 21, he had around high 20s% fly ball rate, 30.4% in 2020, but that was not a full season. And 2022, it jumped up to 38.3%, 2023, 40.8%. So as long as he keeps doing that, he is going to continue to be the best player in baseball, I assume, or I figure, because he has so much power that as long as you just hit a fly ball as much as you can, that's how you hit 62 home runs. That's how you hit 37 home runs in only 458 plate appearances. By the way, he had a 613 slugging last year and only a 1019 OPS, and it is a miracle that it was that low. Like his expected slugging was 99 points higher, fitting for his number. Of course, like he had so many hard outs last year, line drives that were caught, fly balls caught at the wall. Like it is a miracle that his OPS was only 1019 last year in that limited sample. It does kind of suck that we missed out on another full season because he probably could have made another run at 50 or 60. Um, he hit I think like top five home runs in the AL despite missing like 2 months. That's the kind of guy we're talking about here. That is my number one player in baseball.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, I'll continue to talk about Aaron Judge as he's clearly my number one as well. And yeah, people may put, Betts and Acuna above him. I get it, because of how great their years were last season. Because yeah, I mean they had historic years on their own, but with Judge, like you got to consider he had an 11-win season in 2022, and he followed it up with like his like moderate follow-up was a 1019 OPS. His and a 613 slugging. He was elite, and also you mentioned the strikeout rate and expected slugging. The expected slugging accounts for the strikeout rate. So even though he had a 27% strikeout rate, still expected to slug over 700. That is a crazy accomplishment. That speaks to how far and away he hits the ball better than the rest of the league. So yeah, breaking down Aaron Judge, he leads all players in F4 by 1.9 over the last 2 years, despite missing 56 games last year. But when you're explaining that, that means according to Fangraphs, he is worth two more wins than at least two more wins or around two more wins than every single other player in Major League Baseball over the last 2 years. And that's a cumulative stat. That accounts for the fact that he missed 56 games last year. It's not a rate stat. So that says that even with his injury, he's better than everybody else and he's produced more than everybody else over the last 2 years. Like talking about him with like Acuna, Betts, even Freeman, like they all had better cumulative years than him last year, but he was right on track with them on a rate basis. If he didn't run into that wall at Dodger Stadium, because that's literally what that injury was him running into a wall, not him, straining an oblique or a hamstring. It was he ran into a wall making a great catch, not getting a lingering injury. If he did not run into that wall, he would have had around the same wins above replacement as Acuna, Betts, and Freeman. But because he ran into that wall, his season isn't going to be recognized, understandably so. But when you're projecting for 2024, like I have to account for that because like he should have probably had a 7.5, 8-win season last year as a moderate follow-up to his 11-win season in 2022. So yeah, like I think he'll be probably maybe the best hitter in baseball. Oh yeah, last thing I'll mention is in regards to that injury, he had a 966 OPS and only -1 outs above average after coming off the IL, after that toe injury happened. So, and that was when his injury was worse. I imagine his injury was worse coming off the IL than it is now. So I think that won't be as big of a problem this year. So I expect his OPS to be at least 1,000 this year, along with pretty, average or above average defense, pretty average or above average base running. So yeah, I think he'll and I think 1,000 might be the floor for him. So yeah, based on what we know about him. So yeah, Aaron Judge, number one. And he'll have to be dethroned in
Yeah.
order for him to
Or
take off that. Well,
well, Shohei Ohtani just has to pitch again.
he'll have to be dethroned as the best position player in baseball.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
Shohei
just looked
is
up.
is superior.
I just looked up his expected slugging on contact. Do you want to take a guess from
Is
last
it
year?
is it like 1150,
It's 1104.
1104?
Yeah.
Crazy.
The next highest was Shohei at 896.
Yeah. Yeah.
Minimum 1,000 pitches seen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I mean,
Um,
obviously Shohei when he comes back for pitching and if he doesn't fall off completely offensively, he will be number one next year. So
mhm.
I predict we will both have him number one for 2025. But
Yeah,
but yeah,
assuming he does the thing on offense again. Yeah.
for this year, it's Judge numero uno.
Hmm.
Uh so yeah, that does it for the AR top 50. It's been a pleasure. The
We should recap our top tens again.
Yes, indeed. We want to go first?
All right, my number 10 is Bobby Witt Jr. My number 9 is Mike Trout. My number 8 is Jordan Alvarez. My number 7 is Juan Soto. My number 6 is Freddie Freeman. My number 5 is Corey Seager. My number 4 is number 3 is Shohei Ohtani. My number 2 is Ronald Acuna Jr. And my number 1 is Aaron Judge.
Yep, my number 10, Corbin Carroll. Number 9, Francisco Lindor. Number 8, Jose Ramirez. Number 7, Julio Rodriguez. Number 6, Jordan Alvarez. Number 5, Corey Seager. Number 4, Freddie Freeman. Number 3, Mookie Betts. Number 2, Ronald Acuna Jr. And number 1, Aaron Judge.
We
So
had
yeah,
4 overlaps on this entire list, and they were 1, 2, 5, and 30.
shout out Luis Robert.
Shout out to Luis Robert for being the 30th best player. No denying that.
Yeah, yeah, this was a fun one. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be interested to see how these lists look, and I'm waiting on that foolish 50.